Hello, everyone. Corey here, coming in to do the energy update. This one is for the week of, well, the last week of June. Can't believe we're in the last week of June. This is June the 25th. Wasn't getting the whole message yesterday to be able to record it. So here we are today on the Tuesday. And so it's been a very, there's been a lot of, you know, unpredictable energy, and we have a lot of unpredictable energy. And we had some peaks of rise and a peaks of rising up, but we do have Saturn going in retrograde, which also means, it's a lot of self-reflection. It's how we view ourselves. So it ties into the self-esteem, but it also speaks about karma. And so that sense of kind of that it's like a movie reel of our lives going in slow motion, revealing to ourselves some of the aspects of ourselves that we are to revisit and review and to look at, and so that we can actually kind of let go of some of the old narratives of ourselves. So I give example. For example, my Saturn is in Taurus, and I'm actually here to learn to feel deserving, that sense of feeling deserving, but also that Saturn in Taurus is also that sense of holds that great determination and sense of security. So there is always that paradox energy between my Aries and my freedom and being free and liberated and just doing whatever and being that leader. And then the Taurus is about that sense of stability, security, making sure everything's in place. And so to kind of in this lifetime, to really truly step into that sense of worth and deserving, and to not to have to be looking over my shoulder, not the need to be safe, or to feel that sense of safety, but to know I am safe. I'm safe with myself, right? And that I am deserving, I am worthy. So there's a lot of things that come up around that. And there's a lot of things that enter into that. And so I've been communicating this message through in one of the programs that I'm teaching, and it speaks about, and I speak about the gap. We have the, closing the gap on these stories that we have. And when we close the gap, what is that thing that keeps the door open? What's that thing that keeps the door of the past open? That when that puts the foot in the door. So when you're trying to get away from something, but that sinister keeps putting the foot in the door and won't let you shut the door, and you can't shut the door because there's something in between the past and the future, right? And so what is still existing in our now, what is still existing in your now that is causing you to not be able to close the door on the past? What keeps coming up for you? What keeps playing out in your life? What keeps cycling back? What keeps leaking in? What keeps coming in? So imagine as if over here in the past, you want to close the door, but there's something in the door. And so because that's in the door, you keep leaning on the door, and you're always in the frantic energy of trying to close the door, but the door won't close. And you're mad at the thing that's beyond the door and not really looking at the thing that's holding the door open. So instead of, looking at removing what's holding the door open, you're madder because this, what's beyond here is still here. And so sometimes to remove what's in the door is it's beyond us. And so really truly recognizing what it is. So for myself, it was that I had accumulated a lot of resentment. And once I opened up this spine, I said the time capsule of my spine surgery, and they open up the spine, the energy of the spine being expanded and stretched back out, I could see things coming up, and the expansion of the story, my tree of life, right? So that at the ancestral level, at the root and the sacral, is I was feeling and existing in a lot of this anger, and I couldn't place it. I didn't know where it belonged. And it was not anger at people. It was the sense of resentment for a lot of things that that have transpired in life. And I'm not a resentful person. I'm not an angry person. And I'm not in the resentment, but the resentment shows up as, habits in our lives. It shows up in different ways. But in order to close the door, you've got to remove the resentment. So the thing that holds the gap open is the thing that keeps being the draft, right? It's like you're trying to stay warm, but there's this drafty energy coming in. There's always something of the past peeking in. And sometimes it's our own habits, our own behaviors, our own isms, and our own addictions, or that of others, right? That continue to keep coming in. So unless we can close the gap on that space, there is no way to be able to fully to be able to seal in the power of what it is we want now and who we are to be now and knowing our worth. And so the reflection of ourselves is the thing that really needs to change. And that is the reflection upon us as a human race, upon us in humanity, upon us in relationship, upon us in our own reflection, looking in the mirror and what's looking back at us and what we're seeing looking back at us, because it's all built on perspectives and perceptions. And that's something that I teach in my diamond effects or in my more than existing and everything. I teach it in my mediumship. I teach it everywhere because the infusion of our egoic stories or our unconscious habits and behaviors that we have does spill out and over into and onto others, and into our own lives. And it keeps us from being able to end the karmatic stories, those repeat things that continue. And I have a long history in my past of past lives of the sense of being told that you're not worthy of that or you're not enough. Take it back to the witch stories, or it's like, no, you're not the right kind of people, right? And so these narratives and these stories you may feel rising up. And if you can look at what's holding the door open, what's keeping the past alive, what's keeping the habits here. And for anyone who says to me, oh, I know, I got it all figured out, but you're in repeat, you don't know. You don't know. You don't have it all figured out. And there's such liberation in freeing yourself from believing and thinking you have it all figured out. Because I've been at this a lot of years and I can tell you, I don't have it all freaking figured out. I don't know it all. I'm still human. We're still evolving. We're still growing. But I absolutely knew in my heart, I was not carrying that heaviness of the resentment any farther than this time that I was doing this healing. It's not going any further. I'm not living like this. And to bring that sense of my own spirit into the conversation, and not just the shadow, but to bring the light into that own conversation so that there can be that release. So there can be this change, and it's to let it go, let it rest, right? Let that past rest, let that be that narrative that's no longer there. Now that's some of the energy we have happening. And we have retrograde for a while. We have Saturn in retrograde and from, I think it's like the 29th of June, or yeah, 29th of June, I think somewhere. I'm not an astrologer, so I don't really know. I read energy. 29th of June, I think until November 15th, 16th, like somewhere around there. Like it's a while. So there is some tension in this energy. There's some sense of having to use a sense of discernment and really recognizing how we can be so judgmental and how we can be, judging things from our perspectives or our views, but it doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's right. We have so many narratives and so many stories that play out in that story that it's like, how do we know what's right and what's wrong sometimes? And it's so easy to get lost in the energy of what is always feels like the foot in the door. Because when you focus on wanting to close the door, you really have to focus on the work that it takes to be able to eradicate, to move the thing that keeps the door open. Because when we close the door on our past, when we finally let the ending happening, when we finally close the door, close the book on a story, when we finally sense that freedom and we let things finally go to rest, then we're able to fully be able to move forward. And to be able to fully move forward and to get in that state of being able to know that all of my nows are now taking me towards what that future feeling is, or what it is that I'm seeking in that future. So we have a lot of disruption in this energy as well. And that disruption's coming. I'm like, so last week's energy update, I spoke about water, and all of a sudden I could see this gush of water coming in. Well, that prediction has come through in China, somewhere in China, where there's been a floodgate of floods of water that is just flooding through. And I couldn't pinpoint exactly where it belonged. I didn't feel it was really close to me, but there was just floodgates of water coming in. And so that prediction is actually in China. And so now to this energy, because all energy influences us out here and in here. It affects the world, it affects us, we feel it. So I'm also picking up the sense of these quakes, earthquakes, or tsunamis, like something big. I'm feeling like the breaking open and breaking apart energy. And that's kind of what this energy that we're moving into is. We're seeing the deep depths of the darkness. We're seeing kind of that sense of being able to see into the black hole of our own despair, of our own corruption, of our own sense of deceit, of all of those things. But we're also being able to see, when we break things open, we're also able to see the light. We're also, when something kind of traumatic happens, is that we see the light, right? We see what we value the most. We see what's most important to us. We see the why to why we close the door. We see the why to why we do the healing. And so we're seeing and experiencing those great whys, why we do those things. This is why. We do it so that we become nicer human beings. We do it so that we can be happier. We do it so that we can live healthier lives. We do it so that we don't have to deal with such traumatic things, or that when trauma comes, we have the toolbox, we have the emergency kits to be able to know that we can solve this by being able to resolve the big issue. What is the big issue? And so this earthquakey energy, this tsunami energy that I'm getting is such a tsunami of it. Like, it is so big. And it's like we can live in fear of the tsunamis, we can live in fear of the earthquakes, or we could recognize that with or without my fear, those things are going to take place. And what does it teach us? What do we learn? And if we're getting this heads up, if we know that this is here, if we know the possibilities are there, how do I build my toolkit? How do I prepare myself to get myself to higher ground? And so it's about being able to get ourselves to higher ground. It's about being able to get ourselves from down here and not trying to resolve the things that are down here or trying to fight with what's in the door, but to get to the higher ground, get to the place of where we connect to the divine, to something that is greater than us, so that it can move through us. Miracles can happen by us taking the action we need to take to allow space, to allow the divine, the angelics, the ascendant masters, our spirit guides, our guardians, to work through us and for us to be able to remove that obstacle. But first, we have to discover that it's even there, and we have to acknowledge it and not be afraid to bring it to the light, so that when we bring it to the light, it's a possibility of it coming to its resolution, because it's what's buried inside is that treasure. If you imagine, I don't know who would remember these, but they were ice creams, creamsicles they were called. When I was a kid, we had these creamsicle ice creams, and they were yummy, but in the middle of them was a treasure on a stick, right? And there was the treasure, and it was like a little pirate or a little horse or whatever it was, but you had to eat the ice cream in order to get to it. It's like a jawbreaker, right? The gum, the treasure is in the jawbreaker. So you've got to get through the jawbreaker to get to the gum. Same thing, same scenario. And so this is the treasure. So you got to bring to the light the thing that is hovering over, or is in the door, that's holding the door open or covering over the truth to get to the treasure. And when you get the treasure, you keep the treasure on this side. You don't keep opening the same door hoping to find more treasures. The treasures are not there. So you've gotten what you need from that past. You've gotten what you need to know that what you need to do to keep growing on that treasure. And so we do have this speaking to us in such a way that it is telling us that we need to really pay attention, and to not to take it to not to go look for shit to be wrong, because we have the Saturn in retrograde. Everybody's going to feel it different. Everybody's going to experience it different. So it's no different if a tsunami hits or an earthquake hits or a flood hits, is that I may feel the energy, but it doesn't mean it's affecting everyone the same way. You know, a flood on the other side of the world, you're not being affected by it. But what you are being affected by is that when the energy drops, so people in panic, people in fear, people in anger, lowers the vibrational frequency. So we drop down and we don't raise that frequency, and that's how we're affected by it. And so it does have an influence, but we also have our world. So when we recognize there's things outside of ourselves, is that we don't have to mimic and mock what's happening. We don't have to open a door and try to find some more problems to bring into our lives because, oh, it's Saturn in retrograde, so I got to go dig for something. No, you have to look at where it feels drafty, where it feels like it's been frustrating you, where it feels like it's been irritating you, where it's been bugging you, where it's having an effect on you, and to be able to do the work that you need to do on yourself by asking for the guidance, by acknowledging it, but bringing it to the light and taking the treasure and saying, now close the door. Now close the door on that past. Now let that past go, let it rest, but close the door, and letting that door close on the energy, back to the energy now of those earthquakes that I'm picking. And and so in the darkness of that, what I'm seeing is I'm seeing lots of deep exposure. And I feel like things are really going to be exposed, and things are coming to the surface about uh, collaborations and people kind of turning enemies into allies for their good, for the good of a few and not the good of all. And you're going to see that kind of be exposed on a bigger scale. And once we disrupt that energy, and once there is light comes into that energy, it's like disturbing a hornet's nest. So when you disrupt the hornet's nest, all of those hornets are coming after you, right? They're coming after that person or that thing that disturbs that hornet's nest. And so there is some playing out of that kind of energy that's influencing. But I see it over here, right? It's over here. So even though we know what's happening over here, it affects the Earth's frequency, not the Earth's frequency itself, but it affects us as humans on Earth. And the impact that it has on us is that we're feeling the effects of the energy. And so, but it's not real to us, but it's real to how it has influenced us and how it has infiltrated into all systems. So all of the little ants that's been working underground for a lot of years, that has been waiting and doing little things, but not the big things. I feel like we're going about to see big things unfold. We're going to see big moments, big revelations. And so on a world scale, if we're seeing those big aha moments and those big revelations, that the universe that's been working on our behalf, if we're closing the door, we're doing the work, if we're resolving those places, is that there is a sense of rewards that are coming in, and that we have the opportunity to exist in our rewards and to be able to be rewarded in some way for that hard work that has been taking place, and seeing the efforts of that hard work. And it's not about a first or second place or somebody being greater. It's about us all being able to step into how we've been rewarded, how we've been given, you know, beautiful things to observe, or what's on the other side. So if I don't open that door, if I don't live in the past, if I'm not over here and I'm on this side, now everything that's building up over here, the only one putting the junk in over here is me. And so what junk am I putting in? What am I allowing? What do I keep trying to bring back from the past to create my comfort? It's like a hoarder, like hoarding energy. So someone who struggles with hoarding, imagine like somebody can come in and say, we really need to clean this house. So they agree reluctantly, and they go through all the traumatics of cleaning. And when it's all said and done, the people around go, now look at your house. Isn't it much better? It's so much better. Your house is clean. Look at it. Now we're going to leave you alone to live in this house. And we know you're going to keep it clean because it's clean. But can they keep it clean? Probably not. Why? Why will they build? Because they will look to bring their comforts back in. And piece by piece, comforts start to come back in, unless they do the hard stuff to heal the why they hoarded, because the hoarding had an original source. And you got to get to the original source. And that's what I mean by that. What's holding the door open, what's keeping it from flooding in, is that sense of what we have that is the source of the problem. What is the source? And if we don't heal the source, we're always going to be back hoarding up the same hurts, the same pains, the same sadness, but with different faces in different stories. But the energy will be the same, the feeling will be the same, everything will be the same. So it's radical self-acceptance, it's radical honesty, and it's radical change. And we're moving into a time of radical change. We're moving into a time of where we are here to really, truly face ourselves in our own reflection, look at ourselves, and not to be so hard on ourselves and judgmental of ourselves, but to use discernment towards our choices and our decisions, our beliefs, to look at it with fresh eyes, new perspectives, to see on a broader scale of, what of the old karma keeps repeating itself on earth. If it keeps repeating itself in the way of old wars, going back to war, fighting fighting for freedom, but yet no one is ever free. Fighting for everyone to believe in you, but one belief is not everyone's belief. One person's religious belief is not everyone else's religious beliefs. We can't be all the same. And confining people is no different than putting birds in cages. So when we look at, on a world scale, when we look at looking at ourselves in reflection, we say, why would I want to put anyone in a cage? Why would I want to cage my own self up? Why do I want to leave? Why do I keep banging on a door hoping that something bigger than me is going to be moved? Why do I keep the past open? Why do I keep living in the past? And, because that self-esteem, if you look at your self-esteem, your sense of self, and your sense of worth has actually been more defined, and the foundation of it has been built on other people's thoughts becoming your thoughts, other people's thoughts and their opinions becoming what you believe to be true for your life and about your life. And this is where we look deep in. And when I wrote My Truth of Existing Beyond Reflection, it literally was the fact that when you look deep enough, that you look so deep that you can see all the way to the soul, that when one tear falls, then you finally can feel, you're feeling a new truth, you're feeling something, you're feeling, I was none of that, I'm not any of that, that was never my truth, that was never my life, that's not my life, I'm not my past, I'm not past experiences, no one else is my past. That little version of me from childhood, she's not here no more. Why do I keep wanting to raise the dead? Why do I want to keep raising back in here the fact that I create an image that I have this little version of me that exists? There is no little me. There was no little you. There's no shadow you. There's no nothing. These are all aspects. These are all things that we use as tools to be able to look at the ludicrousy of how we are so disconnected from ourselves that we create in our heads, in our minds, in our thoughts, in our imagination, in our stories. We create stories, and when we create the characters. So we have all of these characters that are existing, but we have then the real truth, right? And so when we recognize that the only one here in this version of self is all versions of the self, which is, your emotional body, your spiritual body, your physical body, the whole essence of your aura, the essence of the whole essence of your soul, all your energy centers. This is a system. And this system is running on what it has been fed and the programming that it has. And when we can really truly remove that programming and reprogram it to our own design, is that we can easily bring it all the way back in, all the things of the past. We can hoard all the same things back in, or we can leave a lot of space free for the possibility that I don't know what's coming. I don't know what my future looks like. I don't know who I'm going to be. So why do I need to create a comfort inside of myself instead of letting myself walk around with the freedom of knowing that I have space to breathe and just keep getting myself to that higher place within myself, get to the higher place, and just know that if I just breathe into me, everything else will begin to bring about the rewards. I can plant the seeds, I can do all those things. And that's a huge part of what we have happening into June and following us all the way into July. There's a massive kind of void, a massive kind of reset kind of energy that is really setting into July. And I'm going to record July's message in the next few days, but I'm already picking it up. But, expecting the unexpected, there's more floodgates of waters. There is a sense of, I don't know how, where, but I see the ground breaking open. I wouldn't be surprised to see us hear about some big earthquake, but also the sense of, really truly watching grown adults acting like children in big roles and big leaders, in big leadership roles, and being able to pass their, tell us one truth and then another truth as if we don't know the difference. But it's like we're done watching them play with our lives. And I feel like there's just this liberation, this rise of, you're just done with watching these growing, immature, tantrum little kids, narcissistic kind of behavior running and ruling the life. And that becomes the part of what kind of puts the foot in the door of our future and holding us back. And I feel like on a bigger scale, we're going to see that sense of the mask coming off. And I don't know where it's going to unfold, but how it's going to unfold, but I'm like, it's there. I see it. and really using in discernment into what we've allowed to cause us to hate on somebody, because, of where they are or who they are, or to be able to see, the divide that's been caused, or the narrative of stories. I don't know. There's massive awakenings. It's just so many more. And I don't like to use that word. People are awakening in the masses. That doesn't align to me. I don't get that. That's not how it comes up for me. Is that it's just so simply that more people are gaining more wisdom, but also learning to really trust themselves, because they can't trust anywhere else. You can't trust the news. You can't trust here, because we're being floodgated with a lot of information. And so there's massive amounts of truth. But the one truth that you have to rely on is the truth that aligns and that really truly hits home, and not from your fear, but from your ability to turn everything off, shut everything off, and just go into that deep contemplation. And it's so hard for people to not to allow their thoughts to keep creating, but when you can get to the place of where that silence speaks, grace speaks, greater wisdom speaks, and it brings us to that higher place within us that then allows us to feel the relief and the release of what we've kept trying to control in our own lives, and say it's out of my control. What's in my control? I can't do nothing about a earthquake coming. I can't do anything about a tsunami, and me sitting here worrying is not going to change it. If it happens, I pray that people don't have to, that it's not something that hits in areas where there's people, that it's that that or that it doesn't happen at all. But it's there, it's in the energy. So we have a lot of light. We also have a lot of kind of blended in of what's coming to the surface. So what's deep down in the sea, what's deep down in the crevices is really rising up. And so we can bring it into the light, so that we can bring that change into ourselves, and that we can find our treasures and find our truth, and start to receive and reap the rewards of the hard work and the efforts that have been putting in to bring love and light into our lives and into this world. So be careful of what you're hoarding, be careful of what you're keep trying to battle through, and be aware of that sense of being able to close the gap means I got to be able to close the door. So if I can close the door on something and finally let something end and something go within ourselves, within our stories, within the energy that we hold and that we run on, that we can be recharged on new energy, new faith, new stories, new truth, and it will be like refreshing. And there is a refreshing energy, but it's not all the way in here, but we can be refreshed within ourselves, and we can then be the lights. We can raise the vibration and raise into that energy to feel alive, and to really truly let ourselves feel alive and feel like we are really living for ourselves, because it's not just for everyone else, but it's for ourselves to live, also to live our best, healthiest, beautiful lives. But we don't know what somebody else's best, beautiful, healthy life is. So if we're going to cage everyone into your views, into your beliefs, into your city council, your government's beliefs, it doesn't mean that it aligns for everyone, and it doesn't work for everyone. And the moment that we stifle everyone into one box, we are so far backwards that there's going to be no going forward. And to be very aware of the boxes and the being sold the idea of being able to cage people up, to put people into similarity. It'd be no different than dressing us all the same, right? It's like we're not here to be dressed the same. We're all here to be original, and to be our sense of expression of self, and also to have the freedom to move about, to roam about, to be able to explore, so that we can learn and discover more about ourselves and about others, and to open our minds and open our hearts to bigger possibilities, not for us to be birds in cages. And so remember, every time you hear of something that's too good to be true, because it's the utopia of we're going to just put you into these little boxes and these little groups, and you're going to be so happy in that box. Fuck the box. You're not going in the box. You're not going in the cage. We've been caged up enough. We've had enough chains around us. We've had enough being imprisoned into stories and narratives. And this is about freedom. And this is about being set free and recognizing how easy it is to be sold the narrative and the story of being a bird in a cage. Can't you admire the bird from a distance? Can't you let the bird run free? Can't you let the bird just be out there instead of caging the bird up? And so a lot of stories in here this week to really look at, so that you can get a visual. Imagine that door that don't shut. You're so mad the door don't shut. but we're mad at the door that won't shut, and you're not. It's time to be mad at what's keeping the door open, mad enough to find love anger that moves the mountain, moves the issue that is holding the door up, and not staying angry at the door or the past, but what's holding the door. And that piece that's in the door is often something that we have within ourselves. I send you so much love. Have a beautiful week, and I will speak to you very, very soon. All of my info is in the comments below. If you like these videos, please do subscribe. And thank you for being here. Have a beautiful, beautiful last week of June. Much love.